Welcome to the Money Pig podcast, presented by Goodwin Investment Advisory, where our mission is to lead you to financial pig, peace, independence, and generosity. I'm your host, Tim Goodwin. Welcome back to the Money Pig podcast. Today, I'm super excited to have Joe Beckford here in the studio. How you doing today, Joe?
Fan-flippin-tastic.
Great to have you. Great to see you. So today we are talking about wealth versus wealthy, the lifestyle gap. But before we do, Joe, I've got a question for you.
Here it comes.
How much did Santa pay for his sleigh?
How much did Santa pay for his sleigh?
Nothing, Joe. It was on the house.
Oh.
This is what we put people through here. This is what we put people through on that. Yeah, that was for free.
We
folks.
should do this at the end
podcast.
of the
oh, yeah?
We just lost half the audience.
They're gone.
They just turned it off.
Is this what this is?
Right there. They're
yeah,
like,
listen, come on now. We got to make finance fun around here. We get that started right off. Wanted to recognize here, we have another guest, Notorious P.I.G., of course.
Yeah, we do.
Got his bling, got his
styling
shades
and profiling
on,
right there.
Yeah, if you are listening, you're not able to see our beautiful statue of our Notorious P.I.G., so all the more reason just to watch this fantastic video of these guys here. But
yeah, not to see me for sure.
Notorious is great. All right, so let's get this sucker kicked off here. Wealth versus wealthy, easy for me to say, wealth versus wealthy, the lifestyle gap. Joe, how do you define the difference between actually being wealthy and just looking wealthy?
I think it's a mindset thing. It's intangible.
Okay. Yeah.
Me.
I like that. A little nuanced.
I think, this is a nuanced question in general, right? The difference between wealth versus wealthy and aren't those the same thing? Well, yes, no. You had talked about, I think in a previous episode, you talked about this whole issue of keeping up with the Joneses, right? And so who has the biggest house, who has the coolest new car, who has, whose wife has the biggest diamond on her hand, whatever that ends up looking like. And I feel like particularly in America that we fall into this trap very easily that, we have to do that. We have to do the stuff that at least that our friends are doing or the people that we ascribe to be. And for some reason we ascribe, I need that big house. We live in the Atlanta area, right? You ever driven down Paces Ferry where the governor's mansion is?
Love driving down Paces Ferry.
Right?
Yeah.
Do you ever wonder, I used to drive down there
what do they do? How can they have that
what
big
do
of a
these
house?
people do? And that's the job I want. And it took me a long time to realize that is totally the wrong thinking. The job you want should be the thing that makes you feel fulfilled and feel complete and all that.
Yeah.
And a lot of those people, the reality is that they're probably not even happy.
Right. Right.
They
might be happier now during this season because of all the Christmas decorations. And so
potentially until they get the bill that they paid for. We hang Christmas lights and that was $8,000.
At least. I know you and I are getting to go down there for a holiday party and I'm looking forward to driving down that road at night and seeing.
It's something.
Yeah. The obscene amount of money that's probably being spent on Christmas lights to decorate these huge houses.
Yeah.
So.
I think obscene's a good term. But anyway, I think it's just a mindset of, what is wealth and wealthy to you, and I think it's a perception thing. It's funny because you got a nice car in the driveway and you got a big house, and how do you feel? And then there's a difference between balance sheet wealthy and income statement wealthy, and we see that all the time, right?
That's right. Yeah, because you look wealthy. I mean, if you're saying wealthy, it's because somebody looks wealthy, right? So that's kind of what we're talking about. Having wealth can be more internal, can be more secret. And like you just said, if you're wealthy and you're just income statement rich and you're just spending all the money, you look like you're wealthy. You may not have any actual wealth, right? Which you said, the balance sheet wealth. What's the assets that are going over there? I remember coming out of college and hearing this concept. It's been long enough now that it's probably needs to be adjusted for inflation. But that idea of being a $50,000 millionaire, somebody who made $50,000 a year, but looked like a millionaire because they spent all their money and then some, right? Kind of like you're saying, like keeping up with the Joneses. I remember a story. I was meeting with a client and he had looked outside of my car, and this was real early on, like within the first few years of starting the company. And he said, "Oh, am I paying for that?" Is what he said.
Was this the Beamer?
This was the Beamer. Okay.
I remember the Beamer.
Had a BMW, silver Z3. And this was the same Z3 that James Bond drove in one of his movies, which is why I just thought it was super cool. I could feel like James Bond. But the interesting thing is that was a very used car. It was a 97. This was probably 2007. So this was a 10-year-old car, right? But it's a sports car and it's a Beamer, and there was a perception there. I had it, because I didn't have kids yet and I like sports cars, and I wasn't really thinking about, it was nice, and to be driving around a nice car is nice, but I didn't really realize that my clients might see that and feel like, that's what I was spending my money on, or that's why I was charging them to have some fancy, expensive car. And after I realized how ridiculous it is to fix a BMW, a used BMW, I was like, this is a horrible, horrible thing for me to be investing in at this time. So yeah, got rid of that. And that's when I got the 4Runner. Yeah. The Toyota 4Runner.
Nobody accused you of being wealthy when you're driving an old 4Runner.
What's funny? Same year. It was a 97.
Yeah.
The 4Runner was
driving an old 4Runner. Nobody accused you of being wealthy. Nobody made a comment
about it. Yeah. But it also kind of helped me, because like our typical clients are the typical millionaire next door. And the millionaire next door is quietly building wealth and usually driving a used car, maybe a Toyota, something for hundreds of thousands of miles. And it just kind of, that matched more of the clientele I was after anyway, right? You start having kids, you can't fit them in the sports car. So it's not practical then either. So, let's see. So next question here. Have you felt the pressure, the comparison pressure? And, like you were talking about, like the keeping up with the Joneses, and then what helped you refocus on kind of the long-term wealth part?
I'd be lying if I said I'd never felt comparison pressure, right? Because that's a human thing. It's a human temptation. And that whole idea of comparison, that comparison trap, what does comparison do? It robs your joy, right?
Totally.
But you're sucked into it easily. I say you, I mean, just humans. It's like normal, and we get sucked into it. And I think we don't even realize that we're getting sucked into it.
It's like a gravitational pull.
It is.
It's like the flow.
Till something happens that makes you kind of open your eyes. It's almost like you have scales on your eyes, right?
Yes.
Now, and then the scales are removed and you're thinking, why am I doing this? And I think it's just a matter of, I think I've said this before, is I encourage people to seek wise counsel. And when I've received that before, it just comes down to almost like, hey, just reevaluate what is making you happy. Is it making you happy to have that BMW in the driveway because it's cool, and the reality is cool doesn't even exist? It just doesn't.
Yeah.
It just doesn't.
Because after the first couple of days of driving it, where's your happiness level now?
Yeah. So are you happy because of that? Are you happy because other people think, ooh, Joe's got money. That's cool. Like what's the purpose? Or is it like, I can afford to send my kids to the school that they need to go to. I can afford to pay for my kids to go to sports. I can afford to buy groceries. I can afford to take the nice vacation that we really want. That stuff's way more important to me than having the flashy car or the house with many more rooms than I need.
It gives you that sense of happiness.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think discerning what actually makes you happy versus what you think society's telling you to do, I think is a way to keep that in check.
So that you're kind of answering this next question I had. What are the habits that you have to help you kind of avoid this lifestyle comparison to stay committed to wealth building? And I think you explained it well, which is just like, you've got to realize that you're drifting. You got to realize that as your income comes up, often our expenses keep slapping up, right? As 100%. The income goes up, right? That there's this drift to maybe get the newer car, the bigger house, the more expensive vacation. And it's okay to do those things, but within reason of the budget that you have, right? But not just the reality check on the finances. I love how you're kind of saying, go back to the other side of the brain, the right side of the brain, the emotional risk side of the brain, and think, is actually this next car going to really bring me the kind of joy that the car I had before did when I first got it, or the house or the trip? And maybe it's more about bringing family along or other things that are more important to you because it can shift, right? So checking the style drift, I think is that's a super important. That's a great habit. Who's someone that you've seen who didn't look wealthy, but embodied real wisdom and financial strength? And I've got an answer for this too, but I'll let you go first.
So I thought about this one, and actually several of our clients kind of came to my mind.
Came to mind for me too.
And so that we don't maybe use the same example because
I'm not going to say names.
No. But the one example I was thinking is really powerful, and you might use the same one. I'm going to say my grandfather.
Oh, wow. Okay. Yeah.
So he, grew up super poor, never had any money. Great Depression poor for sure. Went into the military and had a career there and retired from the Air Force. And then he, you get a pension when you retire from the military. So he had a pension, but he was still he was young enough to keep working.
Yeah.
So he went to work for the post office. And you know why he chose that? Because they offered a pension. And he liked it. He liked to talk to people, and he did special deliveries. So he was the guy that was like bringing your Christmas present back before we had FedEx and all the things. Yeah. He was the guy bringing your Christmas present on Christmas Eve to you and stuff like that. That was super cool. He loved it. But so then he does that. And so he retires with 2 pensions.
Right.
Social Security.
Why have one when you can have 2?
Right. Social Security. My grandmother had Social Security, and he had been this quiet wealth builder. House was paid for. Cars were all paid for. House wasn't big and ostentatious, but it was certainly big enough. Cars weren't super big. He used to love Chevy Suburbans, and he drove an old, I would be like, can we get a newer Suburban, please? This one's falling apart. He's like, this one's just fine. I love it. It's fine. It does the job.
That's where you get it, Joe. You finally got rid of that Toyota Sequoia.
I know.
Tell the audience how long you drove that. And
only 21 years.
No, you did not. 21 years?
For sure.
And how many miles? For sure. Like
320,000.
Oh my goodness. That's how many you drove, or how many were on it? Or did you have it from new?
No, I had it from, I had it from new. It was a holdover. It was a year older. So I basically bought it new, but they had to sell it to me used.
Gosh.
Because they'd had it for a year. But yeah.
And you splurged and you got yourself.
I splurged and I got myself a new car.
Yeah. A Genesis, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. It looks great.
Certified pre-owned.
Of course. Not
certified pre-owned. Let somebody else take that depreciation.
This is it, guys. Joe is the epitome of what we're talking about here, the Millionaire Next Door. Just the grandfather DNA is obviously passed down, Joe.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I was just, that was just the way he was. And he never wanted for money. In my lifetime of knowing him, he never wanted for money. He could take the vacations he wanted. He took care of my grandmother and him, and they always had all they needed and then some.
Well, that's an awesome story. And I was telling the story during breakfast I had this morning with some folks about starting Goodwin Investment Advisors in 2004. I'm 22 years old, and I start calling on everybody that I thought had money. And you know what, Joe? They didn't.
Because they were income statement.
That's right. Because I thought they had money because they were spending it all, and their houses looked great, and their cars looked great, and they were traveling. And then when I'm like, hey, can I manage money? And it wasn't even so much they were like, well, I mean, they should have just been like, no, you're 22. I'm not letting you manage my IRA and stocks and bonds, right? And I wouldn't have blamed them, but it wasn't even that. It was just that it wasn't even there. It wasn't an option. And that's where I was kind of scratching my head like, okay, this is weird. Right. I thought these were the wealthy people had wealth. But that wasn't the case. And one of my mentors at the time, who definitely fits the bill here, driving literally a town car, an old school, that old police car with that, what's that light that has the little handle?
Oh, the spotlight?
Yeah, the little spotlight. Yeah, I mean, just old, and would drive us to youth group and all that. And I don't want to say his name, but people that know me know who this is. And he recommended real early on that I read the book called The Millionaire Next Door by Thomas Stanley. And so that was, one of the first books I read, and that's been a critical book here of the team. And we'll put that in the show notes. He's got a follow-up book called The Millionaire Mind. Maybe do The Millionaire Next Door first.
Next Door is better. Yeah,
The Millionaire Mind gets a little long and techie, but anyway, and that's what really shifted for me was the folks that maybe don't look super wealthy that are actually saving their money are the ones that quite often are more likely to be building the wealth. And so when I think of one client in particular that you know of, who is a competitive slalom skier, so I'll give that away.
You're thinking of a different person, okay?
In the retirement years, we obviously know his wealth picture but always drives a conservative car. I'm always trying to get him to buy something fancy or new because he likes technology and Tesla and things like that. And he could certainly have a much bigger house, could certainly have a garage of cars.
Sure.
But that's not his priority. He's built wealth on his own, inherited wealth from his parents, but he wants to steward that well and pass that down, and is very intentional about passing money down, getting not just kids, but grandkids involved in the generosity side of things. Trips are there, but not
ostentatious.
Ostentatious, not as big, not as often as probably I would recommend that he do. But he is that kind of quintessential millionaire next door who has the wisdom, who has the strength, but doesn't really look flashy or fancy on the outside. And it's funny, I feel like that's who we attract mostly as clients. We don't typically walk up to, if you drive up to our office building and there's a parking lot in front of it, you don't typically see Ferraris, McLarens parked in front of our building for people walking inside. It's usually the used Toyotas. They're the ones that are owned by our clients. All right. So if someone feels the pressure to keep up, what simple mindset I can't even say it right. Hopefully I didn't cuss right there. We might have to bleep that out. I don't know. YouTube's going to be like, they're cussing in the money pit.
Adjustment rather than a shift.
Yes. Let's go with the word adjustment. Yeah. If someone feels the pressure to keep up, what simple mindset adjustment
there we go
can help them stay grounded and intentional?
I think a couple of things. It's simple mindset shift. We had talked about this at the beginning, right? Be mindful that you're potentially drifting and you're being sucked into this culture of, I think it seems, I don't know if it's uniquely American, but certainly in the Western world where we've got more stuff than a lot of people do. And you have to always remind yourself, is stuff what's going to make me happy? If I have more stuff or bigger stuff or more expensive stuff, is that going to make me happy? And the answer for most people that I know and most clients I have, that's no, it's not. It's the ability to take care of my family, ability to do things that give me joy and make me happy. So if going on a ski trip is your jam and that makes you happy, can you afford to take your ski trips? Great.
The answer is yes for me, Joe.
That's why I used it. Of course. That's why I used it. Yeah, absolutely. So I think it's just more like find what brings you joy and invest in that rather than what you think other people think of you. And sometimes that's hard.
It's hard
to not worry about what people think of you. But in the end, it doesn't matter.
And when you mentioned the ski trip, it's looking forward to it too. Like looking for, like when the ski trip is planned.
Oh, 100%.
That space between now and when it is, I'm looking forward to it. And it's causing me to recall some of my favorite memories around, having those trips in the past. Right. And certainly like if, it's hot in the summer and you're like, oh, I'm going to eventually be, skiing in the snow months and months from now. So I think that's really important to be grounded. And when you're talking about happiness earlier and stuff, I will admit, and I think science backs me up here, that there is an initial amount of happiness when you buy something. It just doesn't last.
Right.
It just doesn't last. So you want to buy something or go shopping or get a car, whatever, because of that feeling, serotonin, endorphins, and being released in your brain, those kinds of things, because it actually does make you feel happy, but it's not long lasting. And like you mentioned, some of the more long lasting things, you're really doing some soul searching of like what gives you kind of ongoing happiness and then and consistent long lasting, but also like giving other people stuff.
Oh yeah.
Seems to really come out in all the research as people are much happier buying stuff and giving it away. The impact of the happiness level it gives you for that is substantially higher than stuff for yourself. And not that stuff for yourself is bad or wrong. It's just not as long lasting as potentially giving it away. So
100%.
Awesome. Well, let's sign off here, Joe. We'll talk about two things. We'll talk about what we're grateful for, and then we'll talk about books that we could recommend. We've already talked about The Millionaire Next Door, and I think that's a really, really great book to recommend. Is there any other book you'd recommend on this particular topic?
Yeah, when I think about this particular topic, I think of Truett Cathy's book, Wealth, Is It Worth It? We're talking all about wealth versus wealthy and whatnot. And he poses the question, wealth, is it worth it? Is it worth chasing? He worked really hard for a really long time to amass this. And now there's an empire there. And
speaking of cars, he loved to collect cars.
And he loved to collect cars. But again, and don't get me wrong, having stuff isn't bad in and of itself, to your point, if it brings you joy. And his car collection brought him joy. Going skiing with your family or your friends brings you joy. So just find out what that is and pursue that. But his premise was, wealth, is it worth it? Yeah, if you give it away. And I think that goes to your point too, is like, I always tell clients, a generous hand, more will flow in than will ever flow out. So don't be worried about unclenching your fist and letting that go. And we know.
But like you said, a closed fist doesn't let go of your money, but doesn't let money come in.
It doesn't let anything come in either, right? Yeah. And so I feel like I just love the premise of that book. And I think that makes people's hearts settle down a little bit.
Yeah.
And it's a quick read.
I love it. It is an easy one. It's like a collection of his memoirs kind of thing. So it's easy to kind of just take in small bits even. But so as far as like things that I'm grateful for, what I'd like to mention is like, is these clients that are the millionaire next door that did kind of live below their means and drive used cars and not looked wealthy, but were building true wealth. And then I eventually started getting access to them. I told the story about calling on my friends that I thought had money that didn't, but eventually I figured out where these wealthy people were that had wealth, that didn't look so wealthy. And then being able to learn from them how they did it, And so that helped me tremendously. I talked about that in a book I wrote a while ago now called Exponential Wealth. And so I really was sharing what I had learned from them. I'm working on another book that's not out yet, the 7 Secrets of Happy Millionaires, which is just kind of building on that overall concept. But just as far as gratitude goes, just being grateful for these clients and learning from them and just having access to them, pretty early on in my career. So,
yeah, that made a lot of difference. Yeah. And I mean, and if you look at our client base, our client base is probably a little bit different than if you went downtown Atlanta and you looked at a different firm, that's a different kind of person, different kind of mindset. And I would say I'm grateful for, I'll keep it in that vein. I'm grateful for being able to work with people like that, where you can really show that they are seeking counsel and that they take it and that they actually do something with it and they make themselves better. I mean, that's like super fulfilling for me. So I'm grateful when I get to see that happen.
Yeah. That's awesome. Well, thanks for coming, Joe. I just wanted to, remind the listeners, one of the great things about having this podcast is that you can listen to it or view it on YouTube anonymously. If you're interested in kind of taking your next step with Goodwin Investment Advisory with us, my suggestion would be to pull up the website, goodwininvestment.com, and subscribe to our blog. So Tara, who's behind the camera, who's behind the microphone,
lots of good stuff
has been, for years been helping us create and cultivate some really, really great content. So if you go into the Knowledge Center on the website, you can just search that. Again, you can be anonymous in the Knowledge Center. You can be anonymous. But if you want to get the newest content sent to your inbox, then subscribe to the blog. We've got over 5,000 subscribers to our blog now, Joe. Yeah,
crazy.
Pretty cool.
Crazy.
And we send 2 a month. So we're not even hitting your inbox every week. It's just, and we understand that maybe the topic doesn't always apply to you, but I think a lot of times, a lot of those topics do, or they will apply to you hopefully later. And so that's a really great way to learn some of these things that we've been learning from our millionaires next door.
Yeah.
So check that out. If you're interested, thank you for listening. We'll catch you next time. Bye-bye.
Goodwin Investment Advisory is an SEC-registered investment advisory, CRD number 131193, and this episode is produced by evans.net. This podcast is for informational purposes only and is not investment advice or recommendation to buy or sell any financial products, securities, digital assets, or other investments. It should not be used as the basis for any financial decisions. The host and guests may personally hold investments mentioned in this episode. All investments involve risk, and past performance does not guarantee future results. Please consult with a qualified financial advisor, tax professional, and attorney before taking action on any information shared.